Okay, this video is all about the Braille alphabet, where it comes from. This is the guy who wrote the book. His name is Andrew Lamb. He's an ophthalmologist. This is his book, Saving Sight. It's a good book. It gives you a good introduction to primarily ophthalmology surgeries. He's an ophthalmologist, retinal surgeon. But I especially like this story about the Braille alphabet, so I'm going to go into a little more detail on that. This is Louis Braille. He was born in France in 1809. And his father was a carpenter. He was in the carpenter shop of his father when he was a little boy, 3 years old. He accidentally injured his eye, and that eye went blind. Then he got this what's called sympathetic ophthalmia, and it caused his other eye to be destroyed. So, well, it's blind in both eyes at 3 years of age. It was very sad. His parents would take him to church. His mother would pray for him. And the priest at the church noticed him and said, well, this seems like a nice boy. He says, let me see, everybody thinks that blind kids can't do anything, but let me see if I can help this kid. So the priest agreed to teach the kid lessons, and he would teach him about religion and science and stuff, and he would just tell the young child stories. And the parents noticed that the boy would remember the stories. The priest noticed, gosh, this is a smart kid. He really remembers what I say to him. And he says, it would really be a shame, he can't go to school because he's blind. The priest said, let me get some, take up the collections at the church, and we'll pay to have this kid a scholarship to go to school. I think this kid could learn just from hearing. So the priest got him, and this painting, by the way, is Bishop Bienvenu forgiving Jean Valjean for stealing his candlestick holders from the book and the movie Les Miserables, the painting by Darren Ashby. And it's just a beautiful painting. That's one of the best songs. You look at the 1985 soundtrack, Jean Valjean Forgiven. It's just beautiful. Okay. And again, where does it come from? It comes from the Catholic Church, all the goodness. All right, so anyways, this Catholic priest saw potential in this little boy, Louis Braille, and he got him a scholarship to go to school. And he couldn't read anything. He'd just sit there blind when the other kids were reading. But he could hear so well, and he paid such close attention that he was learning the material reasonably well. And then the priest found out that they were making a school for blind children. And the head over there was like a Dr. Pignier. And he goes, Dr. Pignier was a nice, smart, clever man. And he says, I'm going to send the boy over there. Okay, so he sent the boy over to the school with Louis Braille to the school that was just being started for blind children. They really didn't know much, but then they had a visitor one day. It was a Captain Barbier from the Army of Napoleon. And he said that he had invented a night language for communication between soldiers, that you could make a message. It was a little bit like a rudimentary version of Morse code, but you could feel the letters. And he showed it to the blind students. They thought it was nice, but it was very, very simplistic. They really couldn't go anywhere with it. But still, the idea that you could communicate words by feeling was magnificent to them. They had preliminary books over there called embossed lettering, where you could feel the letters, and they were just A, B, C, D, E, the same letters as a sighted person read, but you feel them with your hands. But the letters were so big and so slow and so awkward that you really couldn't make progress with it. Nobody liked it. Okay, but once Louis Braille saw this system of Captain Barbier, he envisioned in his mind that he could create something much better than that. He's a real clever kid. He was only a little kid. I forget, he's just a teenager at this time. And so here's the system of Braille. I'll explain how it works because it's actually pretty simple once you understand how the system works. Okay, so he had 6 spots, a vertical column of 3, and then another vertical column of 3 circles. And so the first dot here is for A. And these are the first 10 letters of the alphabet. Now here's the big trick. When you go to letter number 11, so 11 through 20, all he does is add a dot to this bottom corner. So that's A and that's K. Here's B, 2 letters, so 1 for A, 2 for B, and then he just puts a third dot for letter 12, which comes straight down from this column. And you see the same thing, letter C, 2 dots across here. For letter M, as these corresponding columns, you just put a dot down here. So it was really simple to learn. All the blind kids learned it really fast. And Louis Braille was so excited, he started translating. He translated all the embossed books real quickly into Braille. He could do it really fast. He could read 1,000 letters, more than 1,000 of these Braille letters in a minute. He was incredibly fast. Okay, and then he saw, he could have people read books to him, and he started to translate paper books into Braille. And all the Braille kids loved it. They were reading like crazy, and they were having a great time. They could write to each other in Braille messages. It was wonderful. Dr. Pignier was thrilled by it. He called in Captain Barbier from Napoleon's army. He said, look what this kid has done. And the captain, instead of saying, wow, this kid's a genius, this is magnificent, he was offended that a teenager had tried to improve his system, and he refused to have any involvement. He walked away in disgust, okay? So everything was going along well. The professor of the blind school, Professor Pignier, hired Louis Braille to be a teacher. The students loved him, and he was constantly translating books from written text into Braille. Okay, and everybody loved it. Now they could read the books. They could be like the people who could see. The whole thing was magnificent and happy, and progress was great. There's Louis Braille again. So then what happened was the school hired a new teacher, a new professor. The new professor was a scumbag, and he got the old guy, Pignier, fired. He basically said Dr. Pignier said some things that were not politically correct. He denounced him to the local ruler. The local ruler says this is unacceptable. A man cannot say these things. He's fired, okay? So the good guy's fired. Now this new guy comes in, his name is Dufault, and he's a scumbag asshole. You know, it's like when you think of like some of these teachers, like if you read the Charles Dickens books, they're just sort of brutal, sadomasochistic scumbags who would beat the children. And this guy thought, oh, blind children should not be reading. This gives them false hopes. Blind children are just going to be beggars. Maybe they can learn some simple craft. You know, this is ridiculous for them to think that they could read. So this new professor at the school fired the good guy who loved the children and was trying to help them and was an intelligent man. And then he banned the children from reading these books. But they kept on reading them. They kept hiding the books. And he says, this is ridiculous. And he kept, yelling and being nasty to Louis Braille. And Louis Braille got sick. He I think it compromised his immune system. And he got pneumonia, almost like an early version of tuberculosis, potentially. He went out to the country to recover. And then Dufault rounded up all the books. This kid had, for years, Louis Braille, it makes you want to cry, translated all these books. And this new, a-hole professor took all of his books and put them into a big bonfire, and he burned all his books. All of the books this kid had translated, all the students loved it. And, the students were all miserable. He was nasty. He would beat the kids if he caught them trying to read this Braille or send the note in Braille. He would put them in solitary confinement. He would deny them meals. He would starve them for a while. He's just a brutal, sadistic asshole. And Louis Braille then came back to the school, but he wasn't allowed to use the Braille, and the guy wanted to fire him. It was just miserable. Then luckily a new, younger assistant professor came along, and he recognized the system was brilliant. All the students loved it. All the students were writing notes to each other in Braille code and were still hiding whatever reading material they could get in Braille. And he realized that this should be popularized. But, Louis Braille had been stressed out. His health declined. He got worsening tuberculosis, and he died at 43 years of age, unknown to anybody outside of his school. But luckily, the assistant professor helped the idea of the Braille to persevere, and it eventually caught on with people outside the school, and it became famous. And it's a very easy system to use, and the Braille blind students love it. But that's the story of Louis Braille and the Braille language. And so, what's the big lesson there is, a magnificent genius idea, Nobel Prize caliber of developing the Braille alphabet, and the piece of crap scumbag professor burned all the books and tried to destroy the system. And I'm telling you, that's what happens in modern medicine when somebody comes up with something good. They attack them. Semmelweis, they kill them, okay? And it's sad. So that's why goodness and truth needs protection. And that's where you often find it through the Catholic Church, the old Catholic Church. I know the modern Catholic Church, organized churches are evil, scumbag, antichrist. But there needs to be good people who protect other good people who are weak, because most good people are weak. So anyways, I thought that was quite a story, that he burned all the books, but luckily some were saved. Like the Irish monks saved the ancient Greek and Roman books and the early Christian books in the Bible. So there needs to be people who preserve what is good and what is true. So that's sort of the mission of the Christian in the modern world, as evil atheistic Darwinism stomps on everything and destroys it.